So today we are talking about sex, and but not so, I guess, think of this video as like a sex education video. Not really, but I wanted to talk about some just like funny stories from my childhood where, you know, I maybe didn't get the sex joke, or I didn't understand the reference, or maybe something that I was confused about when it came to my body when I was a little kid. So we're not actually going to be talking about like sex, but more like things related to sex and puberty and things like that. So let's just get into this. We're gonna start off with a story from when I was like really young. I was probably like 6, 7 years old, and you know, when you're that young, most kids, well, I don't know, maybe y'all knew where babies came from, or well, I'm sure, well, maybe some of you knew how babies were made when you were that young. I did not know how babies were exactly made when I was 6 years old, but obviously I knew that babies came from the mom's belly. You know, that's all I really knew. When I was really little, and you know how when you eat a lot of food and you get a food baby, so your stomach sort of expands when you eat a lot of food. Well, when I was a little girl, and I would like, you know, be taking like my bath after dinner, for example, and my stomach would expand because I just ate food. I kid you guys not, I used to think that I was pregnant, and I was terrified and paranoid that I actually somehow was pregnant, but I didn't know how babies were made at that time. So obviously I could not have been pregnant when I was 6 years old, but because my belly would expand when I would eat, I was just terrified that, oh my god, my belly's getting bigger, that means I'm pregnant. Yeah. So let me know in the comments down below if you guys ever like had any sort of misunderstanding about pregnancy or anything like that when you were a kid. Comment down below. Another sort of confusing thing, well, okay, so I just have to say, my poor mom, because whenever I didn't understand something, I would always like, I would ask her questions, and you know, she was always like, oh god, how do I explain this to you? So for example, there were 3 instances where this happened. One time, I don't know how old I was, probably like 12ish or something, I don't know. It was when that one show Pretty Little Liars was on in their like first season or something, and I eventually stopped watching Pretty Little Liars because I got like super bored with it. But I used to watch it in like the early seasons, like season 1 and 2 and things like that. And this isn't really spoilers, but one of the characters on the show is, she's either gay or bi, I don't remember, because again I stopped watching, but she ends up in a relationship with another girl, and the 2 characters end up having sex, from what I remember. I straight up asked my mom, because I was pretty young at the time. I was like, Mom, how do 2 girls have sex? Because I'm sure at this point, I'm sure I knew about the basic anatomy differences between men and women, and at this point in my life, I'm sure I knew about how babies were technically made at this point. So I think in my like, I don't know, 12-year-old brain or whatever, you know, for me it was sort of like, I thought of it in a heterosexual way, not in any other way. So I'm like, Mom, how do 2 girls have sex? And my mom looks at me, she's like, oh, how do I explain this? And she was like, oh, well, you know, you can use, you know, hands and mouth, and oh my gosh, she was so funny. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And that was it. I was like, cool, whatever. And another instance where I asked my mom something sex related. One of my best friends, so again, we would have probably been around the same age, like around 12ish or so. One of my best friends at the time, like, so she was over, and her initials, well, her name is Bren, and her initials are BJ, and and my brother, you know, and all his friends were hanging out, they were over, and they were like 14-year-old freshmen, high school boys, so they thought they were like the coolest things ever. They were teasing my friend Bren about her initials. They were like, haha, your name stands for BJ, you know, and they were like teasing her about that, and Bren and I were like, well, what is that? You know, like, what is that? And they were like, oh, it stands for blowjob. Oh, if you didn't know, for any of the little kids out there, if you didn't know. But Bren and I didn't know what that meant. Yeah, we had no clue. Maybe y'all were like experts at everything sex related when you were 12, but I sure wasn't. And so, yeah, Bren and I were like, well, what's a blowjob? Like, what is that? But of course, my brother and his friends wouldn't tell us, which I thought was pretty rude. You know, not only did they tease her about her name, but they refused to explain why they were teasing her. Like, that was rude. So we went to my mom, and I was like, Mom, what's a blowjob? My poor mom. And my mom was like, oh, you know, and the funny thing is she was fine with telling me what it was, but she wasn't sure if her mom would be okay with my mom explaining it to my friend, if that makes sense. But my friend Bren, she's like, no, explain it to me, like, tell us. I think because she knew her mom wouldn't probably tell her. So my mom is, you know, kudos to my mom though. My mom is just like, well, I guess for those that young is watching this video, I guess if you don't know what a blowjob is. My mom was she was just point blank. She was like, it's when you put your mouth on a guy's penis. She just kept it, she was like, just said it like it was. She's like, there you go. That was it. And of course, Bren and I, being 12, we were like, ew, like, we were, you know, as 12-year-olds, you're like, ew, you know, everything relating to like the opposite sex, like cuties, and like, ew, it's so gross. And another instance where I asked my mom, you know, what is something, well, my friend, I was in high school, I think we were 14 at the time, and, well, if you guys see one of my other videos, I talked about my friend Jessica from high school, and she was like really super dirty-minded. Like when we were 14, our freshman year, she was constantly making sex jokes, and she loved that I was like really innocent and that I didn't understand sex jokes. And so like one time we were at a mall and she was shopping for something for her boyfriend, and we went into this one store, the Mad Hatter I think is the name of it, or something like that. I don't know if it was like some type of clothing or something, whatever. It had the letter 69 on it. And Jessica just started laughing because it just says 69, like that was it. It might have been like on a belt buckle or something. And I was like, well, what's so funny about 69? Like, why is this like, she's laughing like it's the funniest thing ever, right? And so she tells me, I don't know what I'm just saying. I don't know if there's any little kids watching this. If you're a little kid, maybe don't watch this video. Yeah, but she tells me what it is. For those that maybe really don't know, I guess go Google it. And I was like, oh, okay. And so then I was talking to my mom, again, like my 14-year-old self, I was talking to my mom. Later, I was like, Mom, I was like, man, like, did you know what? I was like, Mom, did you know what 69 is? Like, did you know what that meant? And my mom's like, well, of course I knew what it meant. As this full-grown woman. But I was just like, I had obviously never heard that term before at that time, so I guess I just assumed no one else had heard the term before, including my mother. So my mom, she's like, yeah, of course I knew, Megan, like, obviously. Oh my god, oh my god. Another instance when I was in high school, also freshman year, with my friend Jessica. Again, she was super dirty-minded, constantly making sex jokes. And we were in a science class. And I was talking to a guy in our class, like just as friends, we were just talking. I was putting on lip balm, and he asks me, why do you use that? You know, referring to my lip balm. And I was like, oh, well, you know, helps keep my lips from getting chapped. And I was like, well, what do you do when your lips get dry? And he was just like, oh, yeah, I just kind of like lick them, you know, to like moisturize them. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so my friend Jessica, again, being so dirty-minded, she was sitting right next to me while I was talking to this guy, and she was like, I don't know why I remember this, but she was like, oh man, guys really do love licking girls' lips. And I didn't get it. You know, I didn't understand, like what? Of course, the guy I was talking to, I'm sure he probably understood what she meant. And so he stopped talking to me after that. Because like Jessica, she's like, ooh, are you too flirting? And like all this stuff. And like we were not flirting. We were talking about lip balm. Like, so Jessica, yeah, she made this totally inappropriate joke. I didn't understand it right. And I was trying to think, and I'm thinking, and I'm thinking. I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking about it all throughout class. Like, why is this? Because she didn't tell me what she meant, right? And so as we're leaving class, it finally dawns on me what she meant. And I was like, oh my god. I was like, girl. And then she just started laughing. She's like, oh my god, it took you that long to figure it out. And I was like, well, you know, at least I figured it out. At least I figured it out at some point. You know, excuse me if not all of us are like dirty minded, okay? Okay, 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 okay. So another sort of thing, when I was young, like, yeah, like 7, 8, 9, like young like that, I used to think the word sexy was like a bad word. Because I always felt like the word sex in our household, like we weren't supposed to talk about it. So I mentioned this before, how I was baptized Catholic, but I wasn't raised Catholic. And so my parents were also baptized Catholic, but I think they were, I don't know about my dad, but my mom was sort of raised Catholic, but she didn't really like believe in it all that much. But unfortunately, I think some of those sort of religious repressive views on sex sort of entered our household just a little bit. Like I said, when I asked my mom questions, she would explain stuff to me, you know. She wasn't the type of mom that was like, well, if you love your husband with all your heart, that's how babies are made. Like, she wasn't like that, you know. Like, I just give you guys some examples. When I asked her something, she would, you know, just point blank tell me. She wouldn't embellish it. She would just be like, that's what it is. So I always like appreciated that and respected that. But despite that, it wasn't like sex was just like openly talked about. If I came to my mom and asked her a question, she would explain things to me, but she wouldn't willingly offer that information unless I asked about it, if that makes sense. So because of that, I always felt like the word sex, and then in turn the word sexy, were sort of like not allowed to be talked about in our household because like no one talked about it. And so, like I said, I used to think the word sexy was like a bad word. And I remember one time my mom and I, we went to, I was young, like probably 8 or something. We went to this Girl Scout, like mother-daughter camping trip type thing, like where other mother-daughters would like get together and we'd have like a camping trip. And I don't know, that's totally like irrelevant to my story, but I remember, I distinctly remember this. We were in the parking lot about to get out, and we were finishing listening to the Britney Spears album I had brought with us. And I remember which album, I believe it was her In the Zone album. She has this one song on there, and I can't think of the name of it, but this song, she goes like, okay, she goes like, wow, what is it, like, boom boom, how'd you look so sexy? Like, that's how the song goes. Boom boom, no, it's like, boom boom, why you look so sexy? You know, that's like how the song goes or something like that. I remember just like sitting there listening to the song with my mom right next to me. My mom, I don't know what she was thinking. I was so embarrassed because I just thought the word sexy was like super inappropriate. I wasn't allowed to like say that word. I mean, and for the record, my mom never once told me you're not allowed to say the word sexy. That wasn't the case. It was just that because no one ever said it, I thought that we weren't allowed to say it. If you get what I mean. I just remember that. Now, obviously I got over it. I obviously don't think the word sexy or sex is a bad word nowadays, fortunately. So, you know, we're all good. And if any of you watch my reaction channel I do with my mom, you probably know that Mom and I, we've watched some shows like Game of Thrones, for example, that have some very descriptive, gratuitous sex scenes on screen, and so we're fine watching sex scenes together. I mean, it's still a little awkward. It's still a little awkward, but we manage, we make do. I mean, I think it's always gonna be awkward. Like, I don't think it's never not awkward to watch a sex scene with your parent. You know what I mean? It just inherently, like, that's just, you know, the way it is in the US, you know, I just have to say, talking about like the way sex is represented in the US in terms of like media, it's so weird because it's like a mixture of, you know, we're really like kind of prudes here, you know, we're kind of like puritanical in the sense that some of our sex education in schools isn't always the best, yet, you know, it's like we sort of treat sex in the US as sort of like, you're not allowed to look at that towards little kids, but yet we're also like obsessed with sex as a society, you know, like, oh, sex sells. So it's weird. Sex is, let me clarify, sex, the way it's depicted in the media as both a good and bad thing, is just sort of, it's weird. here in the US. You know, I feel like in other countries, like European countries, for example, there's so much more, I think, open and accepting about sex in media, like in films and TV and stuff. It's not that big of a deal for them, whereas here in the US, it's like, oh my god, they showed a nipple, oh my god, this movie's gotta instantly be rated R. You know, it's just sort of, unless you're Titanic. You know, but it's just sort of, it's weird. Yeah, it's just weird. I think it's kind of confusing for a kid growing up with that, because you get these like two opposing viewpoints. It's like, well, sex is like only for like mature people to know about, for adults to know about. But yet, like, also trying to show, we also kind of teach kids like, oh, but sex sells. It's weird, you know. It's kind of like, I don't mean to go off on this long tangent, but it's kind of like, you know, in schools where they always tell girls like, oh honey, you're not allowed to wear that shirt, right, because it'll distract boys or something like that. But it's like, you're telling that to like a 10-year-old, you know, and it's just, and it's kind of like, it's weird. It's like making kids aware of their bodies too young, but yet at the same time, society is kind of like, oh, but kids aren't mature enough to watch sex scenes, but yet you're gonna then make them be aware of their bodies at a really young age, and sort of over-sexualize their bodies at a young age. It's weird, very strange, and I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. Let me know your guys' thoughts on the way sex is portrayed in the media in like whatever country you're from. Let me know in the comments down below. There's some sex stories. There's some sex stories for you guys. Okay, not really sex stories. Those were more like sex linear stories, not actual sex stories. Sex linear stories from my childhood. You know, let me know in the comments down below if you ever had any sort of like funny sex linear stories where you were confused about something when you were a kid, or maybe like an awkward sex talk you had with your parents. Because that's the thing, my parents never sat me down and had a sex talk with me. I think I just gradually learned about sex just through stuff. So that's the thing, let me know in the comments down below if you ever had an instance where you accidentally read something you weren't supposed to, or maybe saw something you weren't supposed to, I don't know. Yeah, just let me know like any of your awkward like sex related childhood stories about like sex education, learning about sex, misinformation about sex, you know, whatever. Hope you guys enjoyed this reaction. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Have a beautiful, wonderful day. So, goodbye everybody. Hi baby. Oh, we're gonna get right up close in that cute little puppy face. He's like, I don't care about nothing, about anything. Okay, I got to put that face. Oh my gosh, this face. Oh my gosh, this face. Oh, it's so cute. Oh, it's so cute. Baba, I love you. Oh my god, you're so cute. Okay, he's like, can you stop? I'm trying to sleep. Okay.